Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. Today we're unpacking a brilliant blueprint for modern engineering teams. I want you to think of this as constructing a highly efficient, perfectly planned house. We're going to talk about transforming internal developer portals, or IDPs, from these simple, kind of basic configuration tasks into intelligent, full-scale business transformations. We are completely moving past the basics today to look at the actual architectural blueprints you need to build a development platform that, well, actually scales.
But first, we have to start with a really critical question. So why do most Backstage setups just fail? It happens all the time because CTOs and engineering leaders get trapped by an illusion. They see this flawless, super easy Hello World setup, they think the job is basically done, and they walk away. But as we're going to see, that initial shiny success is a total mirage if it isn't backed by some serious architectural rigor. It's a classic story, right? The Backstage tutorial gets you a running portal in a single afternoon, and it looks amazing. But contrast that immediate win with the painful reality just 3 months later. Without the right structure, your portal just turns into an untrusted dumping ground of orphaned services. Your templates are wildly inconsistent, and your documentation, well, it goes completely unread, assuming anyone even bothered to write it in the first place. The whole thing literally collapses under its own weight. Okay, let's dive into this, because to avoid that kind of collapse, we need to be crystal clear on what we're actually building. An internal developer portal, an IDP, is a platform designed specifically to reduce the time developers spend searching for services, spinning up new projects, and hunting down documentation. We're talking about shrinking that time from hours down to literal minutes. Getting this right is an architectural decision, not just some weekend configuration task. To make that happen, here is our structured blueprint for today. First up, Pillar 1, the catalog foundation. Then Pillar 2, scaffolding templates. Pillar 3 is living TechDocs. And finally, we'll wrap up with the overarching business transformation. All right, Pillar 1, the catalog foundation. Let's pour the concrete. Now, what's really interesting about this structural breakdown is how it models your world. This software catalog is the absolute bedrock of your portal. If you get your entity modeling wrong here, honestly, absolutely nothing else matters. Backstage elegantly uses YAML to map out this entire ecosystem using 4 main entities. A component is your basic building block, like a single service or pipeline. A system groups those components together for a specific business capability. Then you have a domain, which is the high-level business area owning multiple systems. And lastly, an API is the strict contract between those components. It's not just a simple list, it's a logical map of your entire architecture. But mapping that out manually, yeah, that is exactly where teams stumble. A really common mistake is building a flat structure, just registering every microservice as a standalone component. Fast forward a bit and suddenly you have 200 orphaned components with zero grouping logic. Or worse, missing ownership. If you skip the spec.owner field, the catalog simply cannot answer the most vital question in engineering: who do I call when this thing breaks? And if you rely on manual registration, just crossing your fingers and expecting devs to add YAML files by hand, adoption is going to flatline in weeks. So how do we fix that foundation? Simple. We automate and enforce. The absolute best practice here is automated discovery. You want to let Backstage automatically scan your GitHub org for those YAML files. You also need to enforce the schema right inside your CI pipeline using Backstage-CLI validation. That way, bad data never even makes it into the catalog. And crucially, assign domain ownership directly to a business unit, not just a random engineering team. That directly ties the code back to actual business value. With our solid foundation set, let's move on to Pillar 2, scaffolding templates. Think of templates as the framing of our house. They answer a really huge question. How do we start a brand new service the right way every single time without slowing anyone down? Because we all know what happens without them, right? Developers are forced to just copy-paste code from old repositories, and that inevitably leads to missed security baselines, CI/CD pipelines packed with outdated configs, and README files that are either totally blank or completely irrelevant. It's an architectural nightmare from day one. But imagine how dynamic this becomes with YAML-defined wizard templates. A developer just fills out a quick form in the portal, then, completely behind the scenes, Backstage magically clones a skeleton repository, substitutes variables like the service name, creates a brand new GitHub repo with branch protection already enabled, automatically registers that new component right back into our catalog, and triggers the first CI pipeline. It literally takes an hour-long chore and distills it into a 1-minute automated action. It's incredible. So the crucial point is figuring out what goes inside them.
To get that magic, there are absolute must-haves you need to bake into every template for built-in governance. You need your language and runtime baselines ready to go. Your CI/CD pipelines must be fully wired up. You absolutely have to include observability hooks. Think structured logging and metrics. Make sure the catalog info YAML is pre-filled for instant discoverability. And whatever you do not forget security defaults, like secret scanning and dependency audits. But hey, huge governance warning here. Templates rot if you don't use version control. Keeping your templates in a dedicated Backstage templates repository is a critical step that so many teams just skip over. You really have to treat these templates exactly like production code, review them quarterly, and formally deprecate the old ones. If you just let them go stale, well, congratulations, you're just automating the creation of legacy code. Moving right along to Pillar 3, Living TechDocs. Think of this part as the finishings and utilities of our blueprint. We want an automated pipeline that keeps documentation strictly alive and totally accessible. We all know why traditional documentation fails, don't we? Docs living outside the code base, like in a wiki, get outdated the second the code changes. But docs living inside the repo that requires some separate tool to go find, they just go completely unread. TechDocs is Backstage's built-in docs as code system, and it solves both of these issues elegantly by rendering Markdown directly inside the portal. Setting it up is surprisingly straightforward. Here's your pipeline blueprint. You store a docs folder in the exact same repository as the service code itself. Add a simple mdocs YAML file at the root level. Then you just configure the TechDocs builder right in your CI pipeline. On every single merge, CI seamlessly compiles your Markdown into a static site, and Backstage serves it up directly on the component page for everyone. And this brilliantly illustrates what good documentation architecture actually looks like in practice. You start pulling your architecture decision records, your ADRs, out of separate wikis, and drop them right into the code repo. You co-locate operational runbooks directly with a service, and you finally stop handwriting API documentation, relying instead on auto-generated references directly from your open API specs. Everything is centralized, and more importantly, it's strictly tethered to reality. At the stage, we really should clear up a super common FAQ. People constantly ask, okay, but what is the actual difference between a service registry and a software catalog? Well, they solve completely different problems. A service registry tracks active runtime instances. It cares about what is running right this second. A software catalog, the thing we are building, tracks ownership, dependencies, APIs, and docs at the architectural level. Both are incredibly useful, but they serve completely different operational needs. Another big question we hear is the classic build versus buy. While there are some managed options out there, like Roadie or Spotify's internal plugins, the reality is that mid to large engineering teams usually choose to self-host open source Backstage. Self-hosting just gives organizations the precise maximum control they really need to adapt the portal to their own complex environments. So let's talk numbers. What about the timeline? The hard data shows that building a production-ready catalog, complete with 2 or 3 solid templates and a working TechDocs pipeline, takes about 6 to 8 weeks. But a quick reality check here. Getting full org-wide adoption, that typically takes 3 to 6 months, heavily depending on the size of your team. So buckle up. It's definitely a journey, not an overnight switch. And that brings us to our final section, the business transformation. Let's move to and see how this builds up to the actual business impact. We've built the foundation, the framing, and the utilities. Now let's elevate this straight to the executive suite. Stacking these 3 pillars dramatically cuts wasted time. Onboarding time absolutely plummets because new hires find services instantly. No more playing 20 questions on Slack. Incident resolution gets way faster because dependency maps and runbooks are all in one spot. And compliance? It becomes vastly simplified because ownership and API contracts are fully auditable right from the catalog. Which leads perfectly to this absolute mic drop perspective from 200 OK Solutions, a team that literally designs and implements these platforms. They say, this is not a developer convenience project. It is an intelligent business transformation initiative, standardizing how your engineering organization scales, ships, and operates software. I love that. It completely reframes the IDP from just some nice-to-have engineering toy into a critical, strategic business asset. So as we wrap up our blueprint today, I want to leave you with a thought to really chew on. Take a hard look at your own technical foundation. Is your engineering organization's capability truly visible, governable, and scalable enough to actually support your next major transformation? Because if the answer is no, well, it might be time to start laying a much stronger foundation.
Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep building smart.